Ladies and gentlemen, today we are doing another video where I'm going to be reading your guys' hot takes and unpopular opinions regarding Call of Duty Zombies. For this video specifically, it is centered around unpopular opinions about Black Ops 6 Zombies. And obviously we don't have much information about Black Ops 6 Zombies, so I essentially asked you to just let me know what unpopular opinions do you have about what you want to see in Black Ops 6 Zombies. So we have about 20 different unpopular opinions here. Let's get started. First one here is from Slime Dude 99. Not sure if this is unpopular, but they should bring back custom mutations, but this time allow the community to make custom game modes with it. We can have modes like 2-box challenge, knives only, starting room only, and Treyarch can even make public playlists out of it once a week. So this is a great idea. I definitely do agree. I feel like the only reason we haven't seen custom mutations since BO4 is because the community response to custom mutations was not very popular. Like, people did not seem to like it too much. They did not seem to care to play it, and I get why. You couldn't level up in it, you couldn't do the Easter eggs, so why would most people play it? You know, I understand. But if they introduce it back into Black Ops 6 in a different way, where they do let us do Easter eggs in it, obviously if you make the game a lot easier, maybe they'll balance it out so you don't get the achievement or you don't get like the same rewards, but you're still able to do the Easter egg. And if you make the game harder, there's no reason why it shouldn't let you do the Easter egg. And the idea here of Treyarch using public playlists out of different ideas that people have, like once per week, is actually an idea that I believe they originally planned for Black Ops 4, because there were leaks about this thing called Treyarch Custom Mutations, something like that, where Treyarch was going to actually put out specific modes that they made with custom mutations and put them as public playlists so people can cop in and do them and complete different challenges for rewards. I do believe that was planned, but they scrapped it because obviously a lot of stuff was scrapped for BO4's DLC, and that to me would be really cool in Black Ops 6, so I definitely agree. Next unpopular opinion comes from Sandman 2000. We need to make it as innovative as World War II. World War II had mechanics that were so different than other zombies modes that no one except me liked it, which is sad. I don't want BO6 to be like other games, but I want it to be its own thing. That's why I like BO4 over BO3. So I think innovation is important, but I do think they can't get carried away with it. You know what I mean? Like, I like innovation, I like new things, but don't strip away things that already worked before. Instead, build upon them. You know what I mean? And I do want this game to be very different than Cold War. I know a lot of the leaks and a lot of the rumors make it sound like it's going to be almost identical to Cold War, just with extra stuff. I really do hope it's very different. I do kind of agree here, but not completely, because I don't want them to change it too much to the point where it doesn't even feel like zombies anymore. But I also want them to, build upon what they've done prior and just make the game as good as they possibly can. Next unpopular opinion comes from God Like I Guess. I think the health bars for zombies are a good way for all types of players to understand and learn what guns would be good high and low rounds. It has its issues like clunky visuals, but I think it's nice to see something so small yet so effective and useful. So health bars are something that probably are going to return to Black Ops 6 just because we've had it since every game since Cold War. I don't think they're just going to remove it, but I do think they'll definitely let us remove it in the HUD options just like they did in Cold War. But my thing is they have to find a way to make it so even without the health bars, you can still get that information. And many games have done this, even prior zombies games have done this, but just make it so the actual zombie animations, like, have them deteriorate as you're shooting them, so you know how much damage you're doing just by that. Like, if I shoot a zombie with a shotgun and it doesn't kill them right away, but it does blow off their arm, I'll probably know, okay, that this gun's doing a lot of damage, probably just one more shot and it'll kill the zombie. And you know that based on the fact that the arm just blew off. But, if they didn't have any animations, then yeah, you would have no idea how much damage you're doing until you actually finish off the zombie. So I do think health bars make sense, but I would much rather there be actual in-game ways of knowing how close you are to killing the zombies, actual environmental, organic ways of knowing. I think that's a lot more immersive and a lot more interesting than just having a little health bar that's like, okay, this is how much damage you've done. Personally, I don't like health bars. I kept them on in Cold War though, because there were some, parts of the game where you kind of needed them. For example, the Firebase Easter egg. You actually needed them on for one of the steps, or else you were not going to be able to do it successfully. And like I said, I don't think the game does a great job of actually showing the zombies deteriorating as you're shooting them. Therefore, health bars are kind of something that I just deal with, I don't think they're the worst HUD element. It's definitely the least problem of the HUD in the recent games, but it still is something I'm not a big fan of. So I don't really agree with this, hot take here, but at the same time, I understand it. I get why people like the health bars. I personally love health bars in multiplayer. I'm actually a big fan of them there, and I kind of wish they would return. We haven't had them since Cold War, but I get why people like them in zombies. I personally don't. I'd even go as far as to say I don't like health bars with boss fights too. Like, I know, recent boss fights have had health bars too, but like when you go back to Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, there was no health bars. And part of me kind of prefers that because it was kind of more exciting, like not knowing how much damage you're doing, not knowing how close you are to killing the enemy. And you're kind of just like going at it and just hoping you're close, and you kind of start to learn it over time. You kind of learn how much health the boss actually has, so you can tell. Or again, just like I talked about before, show animations on the boss that show that you're doing more damage. Stuff like that I think is more interesting, or sound cues that show how close you are. Just environmental factors, actual things built into the game that's not just a HUD element. Next hot take comes from MRKO. I really enjoy the multiplayerized game mechanics of Cold War, even though most dislike it. Oh boy, here we go. I'm a diehard OG Zombies fan, but the new mechanics are simply more fun. Being able to climb over walls, upgrade weapon rarity, get all perks during a match, and also upgrade them out of the game, etc. were all awesome features, and I'm excited for them to come back. So, no disrespect, obviously, like, you're allowed to have your own opinion, but this is one thing that I'm very passionate about where I really disagree. But those specific aspects you mentioned in this comment, I don't really think those are like the worst aspects of, when people are referring to it being multiplayerized. I don't know if, weapon rarity and being able to climb over walls, I'm not sure if that's exactly what people are referring to when they talk about the, the feeling of it being a little bit too much like multiplayer. For me, it has more to do with the HUD and other gameplay mechanics, like I guess armor, but I don't know, stuff like this, I don't really mind being able to climb over walls too. I think it's definitely very different than what classic Zombies was like, but I'm kind of okay with it as long as they're able to, make the map design work so it's not, a problem. It doesn't make it too easy. Weapon rarity, I'm kind of iffy on. I don't know, like I don't see the point of it. Like I don't really have a problem with it, but I kind of just don't see the point of it, and I do think it makes all the guns feel too similar. But I wouldn't say that's really a multiplayer thing. I guess it's more of a Warzone thing, really. Getting all perks in the match and being able to upgrade them out of the game. I've talked about that. I don't like that. But again, I don't really think that's like a multiplayer thing. It's just more so a new mechanic thing, I guess. But I get what you're trying to say here. You're just talking about these new mechanics that Cold War introduced. And I get why people like them. There are some dopamine rushes within those mechanics. I just personally am not happy with most of them. I think it takes away a lot of the soul of zombies, takes away a lot of the personality. But there's definitely ways to implement some of these mechanics and make them work. I just don't think all of them really work. Next hot take comes from Thunderstruck115. If zombies drop equipment like they did in Cold War, it shouldn't be able to one-shot an entire horde on any round right from the start. However, I think a system where equipment starts weak but can be upgraded in a game with salvage would be a nice progression to the equipment that would be satisfying. So I do agree that all equipment should be upgradable, but I don't agree that it should be upgradable with salvage. I personally think the salvage upgrade system is just so boring, especially if it's on every single item. Like, it's gonna get so it's just too repetitive. It's like, okay, we gotta, get salvage, and that's everything in the game. You just upgrade it with salvage. Like, to me, that's just kind of boring. But I think there should be a way to upgrade equipment through side quests. Like, I don't know why a lot of fans are so allergic to side quests. I don't know. I don't get it. So many people hate the idea of there being side quests for things. But to me, that just adds more things to do in the match that isn't just training zombies and killing them. So, for example, they did actually have an upgrade quest for the monkey bomb on Firebase Z. They had that in Black Ops 3 as well with Gerard Crovey, but they did have an upgrade quest for the monkey bomb on Firebase Z. It was a really stupid quest though. It's not like it was a well-designed quest. It was just, it doesn't work half the time. It's not that hard. You just have to kill some zombies with monkey bombs, but it doesn't work for some reason most of the time. Every time I've tried it, it doesn't work properly, so I don't know, not the best quest, but if they introduce decent quests that are actually fun to do like they had in the past to upgrade equipment, that would be awesome, and I would be all for that. Maybe just even a quest that upgrades all equipment all at once, I have no idea, but it would be something that would just give you something else to do in the match and would allow you to, like you said, progress in your equipment's abilities. You make your equipment even better over time. There's a lot of things like that on Shadows of Evil, actually. You can upgrade the little Arnies as well as upgrade the trip mines, and they're fun upgrades to do. They're really easy, but they're fun. Next hot take comes from Bizarre Birch Does Game. Games in general need to stop catering so much to casuals. I started COD as a casual and it was easy to figure out. I don't understand why developers think some of these features need to be in games such as a minimap in Zombies, no point map min-maxing, extremely easy Easter eggs, etc. To expand on my point, COD Zombies was never hard to start, but there was a skill curve to mastery. With recent additions, that curve is practically zero. So I agree for the most part, I really do, but at the same time, I do think there are some players that are never going to play the game enough to the point where they're ever going to get, that good in the first place. So you have to make the game playable for literally everyone. That's kind of a big thing for games, but at the same time, yeah, you shouldn't take away all of the different, skill curves that Zombies originally had. And I think there's ways to do that. I've talked about this before. Introduce, different modes. If you want to introduce a mode where everything on the map is automatically unlocked for the player, introduce that. There's no reason why every map has to be so casual friendly, I agree. But what you can do is do what Transit did, strip off certain sections of the main maps so you can play them in survival mode separately. For example, Shadows of Evil, right? Shadows of Evil, I mean, they did have the Giant alongside it, so if you really wanted to play, you could just play the Giant. But let's say someone wanted to experience the, wonderful theming of Shadows of Evil and they wanted to experience the Apothecant Servant. Why not allow players to play different sections of Shadows of Evil as separate little survival maps? And that's their experience. That's their casual experience they get there. They don't touch Shadows of Evil. They don't make that map easier. They just add other options to play that map, to play that experience that is simpler. That is the perfect way to do it, in my opinion, because it allows all players to have something to do while not taking away the complexity and the difficulty and the skill curve that Zombies should have. So I do agree with this point for the most part. I just don't agree with that one point about like they shouldn't do anything for casuals, because they obviously should. That's a large majority of the community, and a lot of people are just going to hop in and play the game like once or twice and never touch it again anyways. You might as well give them something fun, because they're not there to, spend time trying to figure out Zombies in the first place, which is fine. I don't think everybody has to play Zombies the same way. But, like I said, don't ruin it for the hardcore fans. Don't do what Cold War did, where they just stripped the maps down completely, so literally anybody can jump in and figure things out. Just make it so there's other options. D Machine should have still been a complex map, but then maybe have the D Machine we know that's there, have it be a separate option or something. Yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. I know Cold War is kind of hard to talk about because it is a game that had such low amounts of development time, so it makes sense they probably just said we can't do anything for hardcore fans this time around, but that is, one of my main issues with that game overall. But also a lot of the mechanics we talk about here, like the mini-map, yeah, I agree. Like, those things just shouldn't be in Zombies. I know they're there for casuals, but hopefully they'll give us options in Black Ops 6 that allow us to just not use the mini-map at all. Next hot take comes from Alec Oven. I'm sure it's very controversial, but I genuinely don't think we will have very original maps as long as DLC is free. I think Zombies' budget went down the drain when paid DLC got replaced. I understand not wanting paid DLC for multiplayer because of the player base numbers, but I kinda hope paid Zombies maps comes back with a bigger budget. So this is such an interesting conversation. I feel like a lot of people talk about this on Twitter a lot, and I feel like we don't really have clear-cut answers currently because unfortunately every game since we've gotten the DLC being free, we haven't really had a full experience. You know what I mean? We haven't really had one that's had a full development time. It's been, Cold War, Vanguard, and MWZ. 3 modes that are known for being very rushed experiences that didn't have much dev time. So it's really hard for us to, decide whether or not free DLC is actually something that they could do for Zombies while still giving the game as much content as humanly possible. But I do think there's an argument to be had with it because, yeah, obviously, if the maps are free, they do have less of a reason to make the maps as good as they possibly can be because they're not expecting, they don't have to, rely on the purchases of the map in the first place. When they were advertising Black Ops 3's maps and stuff, they had to advertise those maps to be as amazing as possible. They had to show, look how awesome Garad Krovi is, look how awesome Zetsubo Noshima is, because they needed us to buy them. That was how they were making their money. But nowadays, they can kind of just advertise whatever, and it's just new content. Just throw it out there. Okay, they'll have new content to play, and as long as they're playing the game as much as possible, then they might buy some bundles. So of course they want the maps to be good. It's not that they don't want them to be good at all. It's just they might have less of an incentive for it. And I don't mean the developers. I'm talking about the actual, the budget that they're being given. Will Activision give them enough of a budget even though the maps are free? I don't really know how that works. I'm not going to act like I do, but I think there is a conversation to be had there. And I think Black Ops 6 will show us what is actually the truth here. Like, if we get this game and all the DLC maps just kind of, it's not about quality. Like, I'm not talking about which maps are good or bad, because yeah, of course we've had bad maps that were paid before, and we've had pretty decent maps that were free. I mean, I think Malvertoad's a decent map. I enjoy it. So it's not about, how good they are quality wise. It's more about like, what budget do they have? Like, are they being given a lot of time to work on these maps? Are the maps, do they have a lot of original content? Like, that is what is more important. And so I guess when we see Black Ops 6, if the game comes out and all the DLC maps are kind of like just, stripping away locations from multiplayer and campaign, or if it's just there's not much content on the maps, then yes, I think we can probably fully agree that yeah, there's a problem with the free DLC for zombies. But we have no idea if that's going to happen. We'll just have to wait and see. They can give us some of the best maps of all time with the most amount of content with insane depth. We have no idea. We're just, again, we're going to have to wait and see. Because ultimately, they are getting most of their money from microtransactions. I just feel like zombies doesn't really probably have as much of a push for microtransactions compared to multiplayer, because multiplayer, you're there, you're showing off all your items to your friends and other players online. But zombies, a lot of players just play solo, you know what I mean? So like, what's the point of a cool looking skin if you're just playing solo? And especially now with there being a main crew, at least for Terminus, people might have less of a reason to buy different bundles. I guess that's why they're introducing Gobblegums though, so maybe they'll get their money from Gobblegums. But then again, are they going to get a lot of money compared to what they did back in Black Ops 3 with DLC plus having a microtransaction system in the game as well? I really don't know, but let's see. Hopefully it turns out just fine, because I do want these maps to be free. I want everyone to be able to experience them regardless of having to pay for them. But if we end up with really bad maps that don't have a lot of depth to them, I'm going to want them to go back to paid DLC. I'm gonna start thinking that way. I'm not on that side yet, but I will be after Black Ops 6 if the DLC is just not it. Up next, we got a hot take coming from Celtic19. I think the armor system needs to be replaced back to the shield. I like how in Black Ops 4 the shield would be themed differently depending on the map you were playing, and even have different abilities. It had way more personality than the Warzone copied armor system. I know people hated building the shield, so my suggestion would be that they just let you buy the shield with scrap like they did with armor, so we get the best of both worlds. To be completely honest, I feel like there's room for both systems. I feel like they could have armor and the shield as a separate thing. You would just have to nerf the armor, because obviously if we have armor and the shield, it's just like, you're going to be OP. But why not, nerf the armor a little bit, make it so it's not as overpowered as it was in Cold War, and then also give us the shield on top of it. So you have two different options. You can go get your armor, or you can go get the shield, or perhaps try to balance them out a bit and make it so players have to choose. If they get armor, they can't get the shield, but if they get the shield, they can't get armor. There's definitely ways to do it. I feel like there's definitely room for both. But I don't think they're going to do it personally. I think they're just going to go with the armor system, unfortunately, because I actually do really like the shield system 1,000 times more than the armor system. The armor system maybe makes more sense gameplay wise, but the shields were just so much more fun. They had so much more personality, like you said. The different abilities they had were cool. Like, I much prefer shields 1,000%, but I do understand why some people like armor. It's one of those things where it's like, it makes the game feel less like zombies and more like Warzone. And that's just kind of the whole problem a lot of people have with Cold War. Next hot take is coming from It's Me Poised. Probably an unpopular opinion. I would love to see the return of both Outbreak and Onslaught. I felt it gave Cold War much more replay value, with maps coming into Onslaught to grind for a golden chalice on, and multiple objectives and enemy types being added into Outbreak over time. However, I only want these modes implemented in BO6 if the round-based mode is fleshed out enough with content to stand on its own 2 feet alongside Outbreak and Onslaught. This way, it doesn't take too much development time from round-based. So I've talked about this many times before. Personally, I'd be completely fine if this game was 1,000% focused on round-based and there was absolutely no other, Outbreak modes. But I also wouldn't be opposed to having the inclusion of Outbreak and Onslaught. Again, as long as it doesn't take away from round-based. If we can get at least 6 total round-based maps, including launch, throughout this game that are all fleshed out maps with Easter eggs and a lot of complexity, then yes, I will be fine with them using the other time to make Outbreak modes and whatever. At least 6 maps, then I'm happy. But I'm really worried that Outbreak would take away a lot of development time from these other maps. So hopefully that doesn't happen. And if they do introduce Onslaught back, I do hope they kind of just completely change Onslaught, because Personally, I think Onslaught is basically just, you know, normal round-based survival on the multiplayer maps, but with less options. Why not just turn every single Onslaught map into a survival map, just like Nuketown from Black Ops 2? You don't have to do all the crazy things that Nuketown did where they, you know, changed the skybox, changed the theming and everything. You could just literally copy and paste the multiplayer maps, but throw perk machines on them, throw a Pack-a-Punch, throw a Wunderfizz, whatever, I don't really care. Throw all that stuff on there and just let us play round-based survival. Like, no Easter eggs, none of that. Just let us jump in those maps, kill zombies, and have fun and get to as high of a round as possible. You know, Onslaught, I understand why there was an appeal for it, because there was that random factor of, you know, every time you get past one of the surges, you get, you know, random items from the enemies. But like, why not just introduce that randomness into the mystery box or into a Wunderfizz machine like from Black Ops 2? Maybe don't have the actual perk machines, just have the Wunderfizz, so there's your randomness. But I just want that freedom. I feel like, you know, Onslaught was forcing you to go to certain parts of the map, and I don't know, it just felt more restrictive. It felt like there was less choices for how to play that mode, but you can literally take the same amount of development time on this other idea and just turn all of the multiplayer maps into survival maps, just like Nuketown from Black Ops 2. Like, to me, that would be a lot more interesting, and I'd be fine with that. I don't think that would take too much development time, so that'd be fine. Next hot take is coming from Laz Ward Deser. That blueprint mechanic from Cold War should make its return. Makes spinning the box more useful since it's another one of your weapons than whatever bad attachments were on the gun. I thought it was a bad decision to remove it in MW3 since I don't roll the box anymore for that reason. So yeah, what he's talking about here is that blueprint mechanic where you go into the menus and then you kind of select a specific set blueprint for your gun that you currently have in your hands. But I think they gotta implement a more organic way for it, because I thought that was always a really stupid thing. How I have to press the pause button, go into my, you know, weapon settings, and then like select it there. I think it'd be a lot more interesting if it was something you did in game, or just bring back the Black Ops 3 system, or I guess also in Black Ops 4 and Infinite Warfare, where you just literally have attachments on your weapons that you put in the menu. You have your loadouts, they're all there. They call them weapon kits. Just literally just do that. So you could just put whatever attachments you want at all times on the weapons, and then you go into the game, and if you get the gun, it's automatically got those attachments. Now I know the whole rarity system makes that a bit more complicated, but I don't give a shit. Like, just, they could probably find a way to make it work where like you put on 5 different attachments and you can put them, you know, on different levels. So the first attachment is your common attachment. So if you get the common rarity weapon, it'll only have that attachment. If you get the, you know, the green version, it'll have the second attachment that you put as well as the first attachment. And then if you go all the way up to the, you know, orange rarity, it'll have all 5 attachments that you put on within the weapon kits. To me, that makes a lot more sense. And if they want to still have like a random attachment thing like they did in Cold War, where you can go up to machine and just randomize your attachments, you could throw that in there too. I don't care. But yeah, I would prefer if you could just put whatever attachments you want on your weapons and you just have those at all times. I do agree for the most part. I just think they got to implement it a bit differently. Next hot take is coming from Donuts. If you are not following this man, go watch his videos. He's got great videos. Some sort of return of the Altar of Covenants / Black Ops 4 perk system. Obviously the Cold War perk system is all about progression, and that's good, but I miss the strategy of selecting between a variety of abilities that dramatically change the way I play each match. Hell yes, I think they need to do something with perks that are very different than what Cold War was. I know a lot of people were happy with having no perk limit, but I think there's an inherent problem with that because you aren't picking your strategy every game like you used to. Now, the problem with, you know, when you go back to Black Ops 3 and stuff, like, yeah, there was crutch perks. Even Black Ops 4 technically had crutch perks, but there was more of a thought process behind the actual strategy you're choosing with the perks. So I do think they need to bring back a perk limit, but make sure there's ways to get more than 4. So whether it's, you know, a side quest or a gobblegum or something that allows you to get more, make sure there's ways to do that. Or hell, maybe even have literal things you can do in the game to slowly progress how many perks you can get. So maybe like salvage, for example. I think this would be less interesting than a side quest, but this would be a compromise, I think. So maybe you start with a 4 perk limit, and then you have to get salvage to buy more perk slots in the game or something, and then you can go buy the perks. To me, that would be, I think, a little more interesting than just allowing you to buy all perks basically whenever you get the points for it. But yeah, I definitely think they got to change it up a little bit. Altar of Covenants was a good system that I think would be kind of cool. I think they're probably just going to replace any of those ideas with Gobblegums though, because a lot of those Altar of Covenants in Vanguard were basically like ideas that would work well for Gobblegums. So I feel like they're probably going to replace that with Gobblegums, but I did like that system in Vanguard. I think it was one of the best parts of Vanguard. All I know is the Cold War system has to change because I really dislike that system. I think a lot of people like it just because of how overpowered you can get, and a lot of people like that feeling, and I get that, but it's so much more rewarding to become overpowered within the match itself, like gaining that progression in the match itself. If you just, immediately within the first week of playing the game, you fully upgrade your Juggernog and you now have this overpowered version of the perk forever, that doesn't really feel rewarding to me. And you're going to be able to have all the perks every single game. It's just, you're never really changing how you play. You're never really deciding to do things differently. It's just the same perks every single game, the same order. They have to change it up. They have to find a different way. I've talked about that in many other videos, what they could do, but I'm actually going to do a whole nother video probably really soon about the perk system and how I think they need to change the perk system going forward, because I have a lot of ideas that I can't share all in this video because we would be sitting here for another 20 minutes just talking about this one topic. Next hot take is coming from the Green Guitarist. Have the minimap and waypoints for Easter eggs for people who otherwise wouldn't complete them, but have it in a separate playlist and activate it a week or two after launch. So this was one of my ideas in a video where I talked about how Treyarch can like change Easter eggs, and I do think this would be actually a pretty good idea. So, after the Easter egg hunt is completed, after the community has solved it, add another mode where you can play the map and just kind of tells you exactly what to do. And it won't be, available till later, but whenever you do the Easter egg, you're not going to get the same rewards and achievement as doing them normally, but it allows you to still experience the story without having to, try to figure it out and perhaps even looking up a guide, because a lot of people just can't figure them out on their own. Even these new Easter eggs, even Cold War, a lot of people still looked up guides. So it wasn't just like a Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4 thing. No, people still do it even now. But the separate mode would just be a way for them to do it without having to do all that. And yeah, they'd still get to experience the story. They're just not going to be given the same rewards, which I think is fair. If they want to get the rewards, they have to do it in the normal mode. I think that makes sense, right? So I agree here. This would be a great idea, but I personally don't think they're going to go with this route. They're probably going to find a different route, but this is definitely a route that I would be okay with. Next hot take is from Thunderstruck again. I don't think 2 round-based maps at launch is enough. Black Ops 4 had 4 maps at launch and it had less development time, so it's perfectly reasonable to expect more than just 2 in a game with the longest development cycle. So I'm at a point now where I don't really care about the number of maps. I really never have. I just want maps to have a lot of depth. I want really good, high-quality maps. And I do think Black Ops 4 did have high-quality maps that had a lot of depth. There were a lot of problems in terms of the polish on those maps. I mean, you look at Black Ops 4's launch, those maps were, really buggy for a lot of people. They weren't for me personally. I had almost a flawless experience, but a lot of people were crashing, a lot of people have those issues, and I completely understand that. So I want them to make sure the game is high quality and well polished more than anything. And if we can get more maps for DLC, like I'm totally fine with that. But for me, like I said, at least 6 maps in total is fine by me. As long as all of those maps have the same amount of quality and depth as Black Ops 3 and 4, then I'm all good. So the number of maps doesn't really matter to me. I just want great maps that have a lot of depth to them. That's really all that matters. Next hot take comes from AKA Mystic. Not sure if anyone else cares, but I really hope they have zombies levels separate to multiplayer levels like a BO3 had it. I feel like since Classic Prestige is returning, they should 100% keep the zombie levels separate from MP levels. It's a small thing, but Cold War's leveling system was so underwhelming and I hated the shared leveling system. I agree 1000%. I actually made a tweet about this the other day, and a lot of people agreed with me too, which I was surprised to see. The only thing that should be shared is weapon levels as well as like the battle pass progression, but the overall levels with your prestiges and stuff, those should definitely be separate. And we haven't actually had a game with prestiges that also did connect the levels, because if you even go back to Black Ops 4, they did have separate levels. So, once we got to Cold War, we didn't have any prestiges anymore, and then that's when they started to connect the levels. And yeah, I agree, like I didn't like Cold War's system with combining everything, because for me, it takes away the special feeling of getting to a high level, because it's like, well, I don't know if you got this level in zombies or multiplayer. Like seeing a really high level in multiplayer, like that means something, right? But when you know that that person could have just grinded those levels out in zombies, it takes away the purpose and meaning behind it. Like I want to see someone's level and know exactly how much they've played of multiplayer or zombies. And you can kind of tell by their level most of the time. If they're a Prestige Master level 500, you're going to be like, oh shit, this person plays a lot of zombies. But if I see that in zombies, I have no idea if they got that in zombies or multiplayer. I really don't know. And to me, that matters. I think it's important. So I do hope they separate things. Just make sure the weapon levels and the battle pass, that's all connected. That's fine. But if you separate the full levels, then yeah, we're good to go. Next hot take comes from Thunderstruck again. The weapon rarity system from Cold War needs to be removed in BO6. I get what they were going for, but it just resulted in a homogenization of the weapon sandbox that made it so unsatisfying. Hell yes, I agree. And I was one of the people who actually liked the rarity system when Cold War first came out because I thought it made sense. But looking back on it, no, it doesn't. Like, it's such a band-aid system. And what I mean by that is it's basically just trying to cover up for other gameplay mechanics that don't need to exist in the first place. And what I mean by that is the point system. They introduced this completely new point system. Well, I guess they technically introduced it in Black Ops 4, but they built upon it a little bit differently in this game, where essentially you don't get points for damaging the zombies or getting hits on the zombies. You only get points for killing the zombies. And that's the new point system they went with, which I have a whole video where I want to completely complain about the new point system because I hate that as well. But the reason they decided to do the whole weapon rarity and the loadouts is because they were sitting there like, well, we have this new point system. And if we have this new point system, the weapon balance is going to be terrible because who's going to use weak guns? Nobody. They're all going to use the most powerful guns in the game because why would they bother using weak guns if they're not getting more points for it like they did back in the older Call of Duties? So what they decided to do is this whole weapon rarity system, which kind of connects it to Warzone and I guess makes casuals feel more welcomed. I don't know. I personally don't think that's how people really work when they play different games, but regardless, it is something that would be familiar to Warzone players. But when they play this, the weapons feel a little bit more balanced because of this, because, you know, you have the gray weapons and then you upgrade them little by little throughout the game. And most weapons that are the highest rarity are going to all feel a little bit more similar in terms of their power. But in practice, it doesn't always work like that. Now, I will say, I do think people did use a better variety of weapons in Cold War just because more weapons were actually usable. But people still use the meta weapons most of the time. At most lobbies you go into, people are using the Gallo, the Hauer, the M16, like the best guns in the game. Most people were still using those because they were just the most powerful weapons. So why would they bother using a really shitty SMG if it's not going to give them more points because of the whole new point system? So there was still a problem with weapon balance. It's not like it completely fixed it. It definitely helped, sure, but there's also other ways to do that. Why not just make weapons more balanced to begin with? Like, you don't have to introduce this whole rarity system to do that. Make it so when you get Pack-a-Punch, your guns are automatically going to be amazing. Build that into the Pack-a-Punch. You don't have to make this whole rarity system. Make it so literally any gun, even the weakest gun in the game, is going to be pretty good Pack-a-Punched. I mean, they did this with the starting pistols in the older Call of Duty. They always made the starting pistols really damn cool and really effective when Pack-a-Punched. Remember the Mustang and Sally? So you had this kind of decision here. You had this really shitty pistol that is really bad on Pack-a-Punched. Do you get rid of it for another gun? Or do you hold on to it as a separate weapon until you get to Pack-a-Punch, so then you can get a really good gun once you Pack-a-Punch it? Like, that system to me makes more sense instead of having this, okay, let's just have weapon rarities, and then it just adds a lot more to the box. For example, it's just there's too much items in the box, and it also makes me not want to hit the box because they have this system where as the rounds go along, the box rarity becomes you higher chances of getting higher rarity weapons. So I just don't hit the box until like round 25, and most of the time I don't even bother hitting the box at all. It kind of just took away the excitement of hitting the mystery box. If they were to just revert back to the old point system that we had back in Black Ops 3 and before that, if they were to give us double tap back, or if they were to just, you know, again, make the Pack-a-Punch even more powerful, then I don't think you need this rarity system. It's almost kind of pointless. So yeah, that's kind of just how I feel. And also you have the whole loadout system, get rid of that as well. Like, we don't need this loadout system here where you could spawn in with any gun. Just let us spawn in with a starting pistol, the classic point system. People will use the shitty guns because, you know, they're gonna give a lot of points, and then make it so those shitty guns can become really good when Pack-a-Punched. So people will use a variety of weapons. They already made the zombies a lot weaker in the higher rounds. They added the whole health cap thing. So people are gonna use different weapons. They will. And I think they're actually more likely to if you change around the system a bit, if you bring back the old point system and you do all these other little changes. So I agree here. We don't need the rarity system, but more than likely it's probably going to come back. Next hot take comes from Joshua Caprone. Not necessarily unpopular, I suppose, but continue the Chaos storyline left unfinished in BO4 and bring a swift and conclusive end to the Dark Ether storyline. It really doesn't deserve to exist given how meaningless it makes the final moments of the Ether storyline at the end of BO4, but I'd rather they just end it instead of milking it for all it's worth for as long as possible, and then come up with new and creative stories and universes in future titles just like Chaos. Yeah, I agree 100% here. I really do think the new Dark Ether storyline is not very interesting. I'm gonna give it a chance in BO6. Hopefully it gets a little bit better. Obviously introducing a main crew on the Terminus map is definitely a step in the right direction, but you know, how well is that going to work in the future? Are they going to keep up with having a really interesting crew every map? And also, having a main crew doesn't suddenly fix the problems with the story. Like, a lot of people are saying it does. I don't think it does necessarily. The story is still at a point now where there isn't enough interesting stuff going on within the actual like zombie universe, because a lot of it is so contained into these little outbreak areas, which is what they've been trying to do this whole entire time, because unfortunately they have to shove in some campaign connections, which I don't know why they decided to do that. It's such a bad decision. I wish it stayed its own separate thing, but I'm gonna give them a chance here. Maybe they can find an interesting way to tell this story. It's way too militaristic. It doesn't have enough of that fantastical nature that zombies should have. So yeah, I'd be fine with them ending it and doing something different, but I definitely want them to end it even regardless within the next 2 years and be finding some other different stories to do. And they should definitely have separate storylines for each zombies game. Don't do the exact same storyline throughout every single game, trying to do this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. I don't like all of that. Do your own separate stories, just like they did from 2015 to 2018. You know, World War II had their own story, Advanced Warfare had their own story, Infinite Warfare had their own story. I'd much prefer that. Next hot take comes from Mantrador. There should be no wonder weapons in the box, including the ray gun. Everything slightly special should have its own map event, from something simple like the die machine or something more complicated like a bow upgrade. Starting weapon being set like pre-BO4. Bring back perk limits but have the perks being upgradable in match. Give me the choice of deactivating PaP camos. I genuinely don't like any after Duriz. Make Pack-a-Punches special again, not just a numbers upgrade. World War II had some really fun ones, like a weapon that had infinite reserve ammo, but each magazine had a random amount of bullets. In the same vein, get rid of special ammo. They are boring. Instead, either make steps that need these kind of effects to be bound to the map's wonder weapon or an equipment, since crafting is back. So, a lot to be said here. And I kind of agree with some of it and some of it I don't agree with, but the one about no wonder weapons in the box, I mean, here's the thing. Wonder weapons in the box have been a thing, obviously, ever since World at War. And then at a certain point in Black Ops 2, they started to make wonder weapons, sometimes in the box, but other times buildables or things you unlock through some sort of quest. And then Black Ops 3 kind of did the same thing. Some maps you build them, some maps from the box. And then Black Ops 4 came around and was the first game where there was wonder weapons in the box, but you could also get it through a quest. So it basically gave players two ways to get it. You can either get it randomly through the box, or you can get it by actually doing a direct quest to guarantee you the wonder weapon. And Cold War has kind of stuck with that. And I do think that's fine on some maps, but I do agree that some wonder weapons should be only through a quest, because it does make that wonder weapon feel a little more special if you know it can only get acquired through that quest. But I think most of them should be through the box as well, because you're going to have those casual players who aren't going to want to do a quest and don't want to, you know, try to do anything really. And, you know, they should be able to have access to the wonder weapon. I'm okay with that. But there should be some special stuff as well that, yes, you have to do a quest for. I do agree there. And the whole perk limit thing, I agree with that as well. The whole deactivating PaP camos doesn't really matter to me personally, but I'd be fine with them having that option. And then when he talks about Pack-a-Punches being special again, I agree 1000%. Make Pack-a-Punches feel a lot more rewarding. Make the guns do some really interesting things like they used to do. I think, like you said, World War II did a great job with that. Getting rid of special ammo, I don't really have an opinion on either way. And by special ammo, I believe he's talking about AATs, which I'm actually okay with those. I don't really mind them. I just think there should be different ways of allowing us to get them. I wouldn't mind there being quests to get them, or if it's just through the Pack-a-Punch, make it like, I don't know, something else. Make a separate station for it or something. Putting it with the Pack-a-Punch machine, I think, is a little weird. Next hot take comes from DJAK. Bring back the BO4 and World War II starting weapons. I talked about this a little bit before, but I do think they definitely should get rid of loadouts and bring back actual starting weapons. And I actually would prefer if they go back all the way to when we only had starting pistols. They had a specific starting pistol with each map. I would actually much prefer that, but I would definitely be okay with the World War II and Black Ops 4 system where they had a certain amount of weapons that you could choose as your starting pistol. So you can choose, any of the pistols in the game. You could sometimes choose like a shotgun or something, but for the most part, they just gave you like the worst weapons in the game and said, okay, you can start with these, but you can't, start with anything else. I would much prefer them go back to that. Maybe introduce loadouts in a different way. Have it so you can still pick a loadout weapon, but you have to get the loadout weapon by doing something on the map. You can't just immediately spawn in with it. Next hot take comes from Gavin Moon. I want the Pack-a-Punch to be more difficult to get like Black Ops 3 or Black Ops 2. The Pack-a-Punch in Cold War was too easy in my opinion. So yeah, the only reason they made Pack-a-Punch so easy to get is, again, the conversation we were talking about before, where they just wanted everything to be, very accessible for casual players. And like I said, they can definitely just make other modes for that so they don't have to dumb down the experience on the main map. Maybe just make separate survival maps and then have the Pack-a-Punch be automatically unlocked so those players can just immediately get it. But yeah, I do agree they should bring back harder to earn Pack-a-Punches, but maybe don't make it like complex necessarily. Like I don't think it should be impossible to do without a guide. More so just make it harder to get, make it longer to get. Origins is a good example. Getting all 6 of the generators on actually takes a decent amount of time on Origins, but it's something anyone can do. It's not like you need a guide for that. It's pretty easy to know how to turn on generators. Even Shadows of Evil, really, you don't need a guide for that. I don't know why people always act like you need a guide for that Pack-a-Punch quest. You don't, but it does take some time and there is a lot of work towards it, sure. But I actually like that. It makes the Pack-a-Punch more rewarding to get. I shouldn't be able to get it within the first 5 minutes of the match. That is not very rewarding. And another hot take from Thunderstruck. This is 4 hot takes in one video. Ethereum upgrades shouldn't be a thing in BO6. If you're going to have upgrades for things like perks or weapon classes, they should be earned in-game instead of out of game. Maybe do a more refined version of Vanguard's perk upgrades. Yes, 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 I agree. I've talked about this before as well, but we need the upgrades in-game. I'm sick and tired of these permanent upgrades that they did in Cold War. It just was not a fun system. I thought it had a lot of problems behind it. Definitely they should be earned in game and make it a fun, way. Don't make it like Vanguard where you had to purchase the upgrade a bunch of times. No, that's not good. Find a different way for us to upgrade in game, and I think it could be a lot more enjoyable. And there's just a better progression there, more organic progression. Next hot take is coming from M Hill. Wunderfizz that gives you a random perk and doesn't have a menu. So I get what is being said here. Obviously, I do have a big issue with the Wunderfizz machine in Cold War. I think it's really dumb to have this in-game menu that lets you select any perk you want at any time. It kind of defeats the purpose of having actual perk locations. But the thing with a random perk Wunderfizz machine is that wouldn't make sense in a game with no perk limit. Like, what would be even the point of getting the perks themselves? You could just go up to this machine, just keep getting the perks and then just buying them from there. Especially if they were cheaper price, of course you're just gonna get them from here. So I don't really know. I would be okay with this, just you have to bring it back in a system where there is perk limits, and then it would make sense, just like it did in Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3. But I definitely do agree that there needs to be something, changed about the Wunderfizz system in Cold War. Either just remove it completely or just add a different version of the Wunderfizz. But again, you'd have to bring in perk limits. You'd have to change up the perk system quite a bit to make that work, but they gotta change something. And that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below of all these hot takes, and let me know some of your hot takes about Black Ops 6 Zombies. I will see you guys all in my next one. Peace out.